Hey everybody, welcome back to Old World Legends, where we focus on growing the community. I'm your host Mike. With me as always is Evan.
You know, I always thought Nagash was kind of like the Warhammer Sauron, and this is not an unpopular opinion.
Well, Nagash is definitely one of the coolest characters in the old world, that's for sure. But yes, the question is Nagash? They're releasing this new. These are new novels, right? But
Yeah.
they've been out there now. We've all been hearing for a while. Now, we don't actually have any insider information. We don't have any leaks or anything like that. But we are aware of the rumors that everybody else out there on the internet has been talking for a while is, hey, in theory, Vampire Counts Legacy faction might be one of the first ones to become core, and it could happen in 2026. Now, we don't have any other information, but all of a sudden, we did see, remember, Evan, they did release in AOS, they did have those new models, right? So they did take the classic Graveguard and the classic Black Knights, and they separated them out and made new model releases, which they're great, by the way.
Yes.
And they called them something different, didn't they? They didn't call them the same thing. They changed the names.
Well, that's true. And also, a year and a half ago or so, they released the newer Marauders that were called for AOS, the AOS ones, Dark Oath.
The Dark Oath ones,
right?
Yeah,
with a whole new name and a relatively new style, a little bit more like windswept, right? And and now we have Old World has their own Marauders that are going in a totally
Nobody saw
different
that
direction.
coming. Did they? Right?
Yeah, there certainly seems to be, if anything, more of a propensity, not for AOS and for Old World to do different things, but if anything, like there seems to be like, oh, everyone's actually really interested to do the same concept. They just want to do it their own way, you know. Like you're going to have the Old World Marauders, and they're going to have the Dark Oath, you know, that's an AOS version. And this might be something that other organizations are not successful enough to pull off. Let's release the same models twice and see how many people buy both. Because I've played against plenty of AOS Dark Oath or AOS, you know, Warriors of Chaos, where and that's totally fine. And then they go and come out and say, hey, you know what? We're just going to make new of that too. And that's okay. So
that's okay. We still love this game so much. And quite frankly, they keep making great models. We're just going to keep buying them. But now, so they've already kind of laid the groundwork for can we bring back Vampire Counts in its pure form, make them a core faction in Old World. And then they just drop this, hey, by the way, we're re-releasing these classic Nagash novels as a collection. And look at the wrapper of that, Evan. That looks distinctly like an Old World wrapper, doesn't it?
Yeah, so there's definitely some of that Tomb Kings vibe to this front artwork. I don't know whether this artwork's totally original for Old World, but I imagine it is because they've been doing so much new artwork for Old World.
They have been
in the books. But it definitely also has some of that like Vampire Counts vibe because there's like ghosts coming out of that, and there's nothing like ethereal ghosty in the whole Tomb Kings roster. So certainly suggests that they're not just ignoring the entire concept of who Nagash was and, you know, how the vampires eventually descended from him, even though Neferata had a lot more to do with that than Nagash by himself.
But he made the potion. Yeah.
Okay. We're not going to be removing Neferata's agency on this podcast, but she's still the girl,
queen.
Okay?
We're not saying anything bad about her.
Mike
she's
and I are both Vampire Counts.
From her.
We're both Vampire Counts fans, but I'm a Neferata fan.
Nagash made the potion that continued the series. Anyway, vampires are awesome. There's a lot of hints here. So the question is, are they trying to tell us, you know, subtly, which they have been doing, right?
Yes.
This is not us just out of nowhere, right? They've hidden models in artwork and the core rulebook and the stories, right? Even at the beginning, like, we're never going to do, you know, Cathay. Oh, well, you have this whole section of the book dedicated to Cathay. And like, there's been all these hints everywhere. So there could just be another hint. So we're not going to sit here and speculate the whole time in terms of are or aren't they going to become core? I'm a firm believer that Vampire Counts are one of the coolest armies, one of the most favorite ones. They are going to become core, and with the success of Old World, it is inevitable. So the question, Evan, for today is, if they did make them core in 2026 and they released a new Arcane journal, as we saw with Cathay, right? Maybe it's 1, maybe it's 2, don't know. What do you think they would do? What do you think they would change? Change, right? If they release this as a core faction next year.
So what do we think needs to change, or what we want to change? Because I think a lot of people out there
maybe a little bit of both.
Yeah, because Vampire Counts, a lot of people are like, hey, I'm eating good. They're doing really well in the competitive scene. Sure, but they are also a faction that is very one-sided, especially with the limitations of the legacy rules. Now, legacy armies have gotten their best upgrade in a year and a half so far with the release of the new Arcane Journal that has been leaked that has new core magic items, that has magic items for everybody. And so the Legacy armies get to have those too if you're not a demon player.
Yep.
And that'll be great for sure, but it doesn't necessarily outweigh the problems of internal balance in this book. And so we really want to talk about the rules changes we want to see and also the models, because for Vampire counts probably have some of the most gorgeous model line that is not being currently sported by Games Workshop of any of them. The freaking skeleton warriors for Vampire counts, like the ones that are more rigid, the ones that just got replaced, amazing. And then I have a bunch of those the AOS ones. They're so fragile; they just break constantly. The guys that are always like holding their shield out to the side. I would love to get more of the older ones. So I actually don't really want that many updates to some of these units. Maybe something like zombies, because some of the older zombies were really goofy.
I don't know that they need to your point. Like I question, they don't have the resources for this. I do think they will release the old kits, right? And the question is which kits, but I think we likely could see what we see for the Chaos Warriors, right? Where there's a significant re-release of the old model range for Old World, and there's also all the great AOS models, and just use whatever models that you love, right? And such. I think there's only a few kits that there's still some overlap, right? Such as the Blood Knights are an obvious one, right? They have not been replaced. But to your point, Graveguard, zombies, skeletons, Black Knights all have new kits.
They've been new kits in AOS, and so the old ones are now freed up to be in a separate game.
Absolutely. There's quite a few, almost the entirety of the old model ranges. Even the ghouls are new, right? Versus there's actually been multiple versions of the ghouls over the years. New. The ghosts, there's the old ghosts. They could re-release them probably as the metal ones versus if you want the more AOS ones and such. So there's quite a few interesting things you could do. I think it's just really up to the players. Actually, one of the things I did is I actually kind of got bored with to your point, the skeletons are a bit problematic and or the zombies. I just love the Night Haunt models. So I just actually got a whole bunch of Night Haunts and said, cool, these are my zombies, right?
That works.
It's just fun. So just up to the player, right?
Yeah, definitely. I've got a lot of printed zombies that work just fine for me.
And they've made a lot of vampires over the years. They've made so many vampire models because everybody loves buying vampire models. So that's not a problem. And there's the old zombie dragon. They could re-release that if they wanted to. I don't know that they would. Probably made to order, right?
Yeah, I mean, it is plastic, right? The one that's kind of more hunched over. Right?
There were multiple versions of it. The previous one is still with the kit. That was the Terrorgeist and the zombie dragon.
Right, the Terrorgeist zombie dragon combo.
So that
you would
kit
need
still
to have
exists.
that kit because you're going to have Terrorgeist regardless, right?
Yep. But they have the new zombie dragon, so they could just release that kit again, and off you go. And you could just use the old model, or you could use the new one. Why would you not use the new one? It's so amazing. But it just depends on what you want.
Well, just to be totally clear for everybody, there is a huge pattern now that has been developing. The pattern is Old World releases, says, here's all the unit profiles. We don't have all the models ready for you yet.
Nope.
So, stay tuned for that. Here's some of them. Here's some plastic battalion boxes some plastic. Great. And then, you know what else they do? They say, hey, you can have this unit called Blood Knights. And all of the artwork in the book is going to be the old metal ones that cost $100 for 5. And we're going to put those on made to order, and you can get those if you want. But if you use the AOS ones, we won't tell you, and we won't tell anyone about it, right? That's essentially
totally
been
fine.
And this is the status quo for what else? Okay, all of the artwork in the book is the old ass treekin that are like, doing a funny face.
Yeah, from the 80s or whatever. Yeah.
Right, and the Treeman Ancient is also this like tiny, like this big. But you can just use the Sylvaneth if you really want to, right? And then go for it.
Yeah. So besides models, which I think they're pretty well covered, and I think this actually is a big reason why I do believe vampires are one of the obvious choices, not only their popularity, but because of their model ranges to re-release them. I think it is very likely. But in terms of the rules, Evan, let's talk about the rules, because they've learned a whole bunch, haven't they, over the last almost 2 years now? And we have a new FAQ dropping in January, we've been told. So this is an opportunity for them to finish the book, if you will, that they never started, but an opportunity to revise things from what they've learned.
So I think there is a really oppressive theme in this entire roster that says vampire counts, the vampire themselves, used to be broken beyond belief, we need to just put that guy in handcuffs and tie him down to a mast because we're scared of him. We can't let him do anything. Meanwhile, let's make the Necromancer just it busted, in totally the opposite direction. It's like, and you see this all over these special items they get, the rules that they do not have. The one I talk about constantly is a Vampire Thrall and a Vampire Count are the only wizards in the game that have the option of buying armor and cannot wear armor in cast. They have to choose. That's just something that those guys have to deal with. That we just talked about it in our core rulebook armor section. That rule doesn't apply to anybody because literally every other wizard that has armor has a special rule that says, yeah, but I don't care. Like the Cathayan wizards, for example.
Yep. So that's certainly something I hope they do address because I certainly would like my vampire to cast and such. And to Evan's point, there was a point in time in older editions where the vampire could become the most powerful single model in the game.
Yes.
Where it had stats better than the Chaos Lord, and through magic items and vampiric powers, you could make him able to kill a bloodthirster. That is very much not true in this version, and I think that's fine to saying the Chaos Lord has the best raw stats. That doesn't bother me.
Sure.
Don't get me wrong. I am a longtime Vampire Counts player for 30 plus years now. They are my favorite army, but that doesn't bother me. But I am disappointed with like a lot of the vampiric powers are just not worth taking, or they're overly costed. And such. So I'm really hoping, like, they have a lot of the old classic themes in there. Like, remember in one of the older books, they had all the different types of vampires. Here's with the blood dragon vampires. Here's the necromancer vampires. Here with the Strigor vampire. They have a little bit of that still represented here in some of the magic items, and they have that a little bit represented in some of the bloodline powers. But they clearly don't have that same strong identity that they had before. I sure wish they would bring it back.
So Bloodlines is number 1 on my list. You've got the Necrarch Bloodline, which was the wizard-focused bloodline. Yeah. My personal favorite, the Lahmian bloodline, which is Neferata's bloodline of subversive and seductive vampires who kind of can infiltrate the realms of men. And I would love to see that represented. I would love to see that represented as like you can bring extra mercenaries to your army, that kind of thing. Like we've already seen that with things like the Renegade Crown's army list, that they're perfectly willing to give you these customizable character upgrades that then affect what your roster is going to be. That would be unbelievably awesome for these bloodlines, for example. Then the Von Carsteins are all of the kind of main character vampires. Boo, piss,
classic.
Boo, they're all dead.
Classic. No,
they all died.
No, I don't. But sorry, we're not in that timeline, sir. That has not happened.
Steak.
To be fair, haven't all vampires died? So the Von Carsteins keep coming back.
Yeah, I know. They definitely have that whole "I'm dead." I was.
Everyone loves Vlad and Isabella. They're amazing. They're great. And Manfred classics.
Neferata's not even in Total War, okay? She's been done dirty, and that is a big problem for me. Okay, and then there's also the Strigoi, who are kind of like worthwhile of having their own, unit entry. At least in this book they do. But it's kind of like I would almost rather than be redone as just a vampire that then gets an upgrade where he has no armor, but he gets frenzy, that kind of thing, as like the Strigoi. So obviously the Bloodlines, big deal. And I mean, you don't even see anything where like, hey, if you're Generals of Strigoi Ghoul King, you don't even get like a better upgrade for your ghouls to make them like more interesting. Like that's not even a thing.
Clearly
that's in here.
Unfinished. Well, I think the thing is, there's so much flavor, so much fun lore and background and rules and units. Like you could see what they did with AOS. They're like, wow, the Vampire Count army is so awesome. Let's turn this into 4 armies. Which is what they did. They basically said, let's take all the Wraiths and let's make a Wraith army, and that's the Night Haunt. They said, let's take the Ghouls and let's make a Strigoi thing. And they've done a cool job fleshing them out and making new models and all that, but this is old world, and they're going to clearly go in a different direction and still keep... That being said, if you go way far back, the Undead, before his Vampire Counts, also included the mummies. So this has been such an a fountain of cool ideas and creativity and models over the years. It just keeps expanding, but what are they going to do now? Well, I don't know that they're going to go so far down the bloodlines now. I think that might be... Clearly there's an edition 2 or second Arcane Journal or third. There's so much they can expand upon it, but what are they going to fix out of the gate that are easy wins, right?
I mean, I actually think that is an easy win. It's the same thing as the Wood Elf Kindreds, right? It's just my character has an upgrade. You take the same stat line, the same price point, and you just get all of these laundry list of things, right? It's nice and simple. They just did it for Chaos. They said, hey, all your Chaos characters and our Chaos units can now buy 1 or 2 of these mutations from the following list. cool, I have all this new customization. Give me that for vampire counts where it's like, if you do this, your ghouls have this bonus. And if you do this, then your skeletons have this bonus. And it's just kind of go down that route
That'd
of
be cool.
different ways. And so just so people know, AOS is very clearly of the mindset that they want to try to make a more fractured and individual armies where you just have like if you used to be a vampire counts player and you play AOS now, you have like 5 armies. Like you just have 5 separate individual different ones.
Yep, they're just different.
But in Old World, it's all about these, the Arcane Journals having the Army of Infamy, where it's more about the focus on a specific area, not necessarily like, the exclusion of all other things. Like you can still have Shadow Warriors in my army from Krace, for example.
It's possible we could even get that with the initial Arcane Journal with Vampire Counts. They could give us, here's a new Grand Army refresh, and
plus
here's one variant army, right? And then we might get both in a single release. I mean, it's possible. Or we might just get what Cathay, like, here's just a refresh of the Grand Army. We don't know. Well, I think some of the things I'd love to see, though, Evan, is we definitely see the zombies used a whole bunch, but skeletons really hit the table right now. So there's a lot of ways that they could address that. I'd love it if they could address the skeletons and give them a buff or cost efficiency so we could see skeletons.
I don't think there's anything wrong with skeletons. It's zombies are stupid. Like it's
more
very
cost
goofy.
effective.
Yeah, because they're half the price, and you also don't have to buy as many because you just bring them back to life from the start. So then you get more than you paid for.
Yep. They have the potential to address Graveguard right now, which we know with the various buffs and combos in the game, they can become the best, if not certainly top 3 best elite infantry in the game without question. So hopefully this is an opportunity to address that in different ways. I don't think there's one way they could address it, or they might just leave it as is. Blood Knights, we see a whole bunch. To your point, the ghouls rarely see them hit the table. They're just again, it's the problem is other things are more points efficient for what they do, and I think some of the other things like the Vargheists and the Varghouls, as well as those medium sized the monstrous infantry and vampire counts, we rarely see them hit the table.
Vargheists are one of my favorites. They're gorgeous. Those wacko.
But they're just so cost. But honestly, it's the same problem like with trolls. I love trolls, but unless you have an army dedicated, like here's the troll army, like we just don't see them because monstrous infantry are just not efficient right now. They haven't been since the release of Old World. It's the same problem with ogres, minotaurs, trolls, and the Vargheists and the Varghouls. They cost too many points for what their output is.
So the Vargheists, right? So first of all, you have the undead problem of I want to spend my entire rare slot on a single unit that I can just resurrect instead of having them kind of split up and divided. I think that a really good change, not just to vampire counts, but to all undead would be if the Raze Dead ability was more of like everyone nearby me gets a little bit of health instead of I'm going to pick that one unit and they're going to go back to full health all of a sudden. You killed 20 Graveguard, I healed 25 back, so good luck with that next turn.
The healing spikes are problematic.
Well, it's specifically, I did all of that to one unit, whereas let's say you're not playing correctly and you try to divide your shots between multiple units, well, that could go in your blow up in your face. Or if you try to fire all of your guns and arrows into a single unit and they still have one guy left at the end of the turn, and then next round there's 25 guys left again because they just healed so many in one go.
Right? Yeah, it creates a problem where the enemy, even if they focus fire, it's still that actually could be if they don't actually get the job done and wipe the unit out, it actually can
be worse.
Blow back in their face, be worse. Yeah.
So I mean, obviously we want to see items. So if we go through some of the items, Helm of Commandment, Necromancer and white only. Vampire can't use that. Hand of Dust, Necromancer only. Vampire can't. Why can't the vampire just buy this? Because it's just like a relatively okay assailment spell, and the Necromancer doesn't want to be in combat, obviously. And it's like, I think you could just give this to the vampire. What's wrong with that? So then Cloak of Mist and Shadows is also Necromancer only. I mean, I think that one makes a little more sense. An Ethereal Vampire might be too much, but definitely but that was all of the enchanted items. So there's no, sneaky pull rabbit out of the hat thing. There's no, I've got, Crown of Commandment or anything like that. It's all Necromancer and whites in here. Arcane items, some of those are don't really make sense on a vampire. Like if you can't resurrect anyway, then why would be resurrecting twice make sense? And if you can resurrect, you only resurrect as level 1. The only vampire-specific item in here is the Von Carstein ring, but it's like a 40-point version of the My God,
It's
I
too
played too many
expensive.
armies, so my brain, when as soon as I try to think of the item, I forget what it's called.
Yeah, but
The,
to your point, I think the main takeaway is that it's the army is called vampire counts,
yeah,
and there's
with
just
no vampires.
actually not with very little vampire support, very few compelling vampire builds, and very few vampire magic items, and the vampiric powers are not great to say the least. So I think that's the biggest thing. I don't think they're going to redo a whole bunch of the items. I don't think they're going to redo the whole
Not
book
redo.
and
I'm
do a
saying
massive
they're just gonna give you
overhaul.
new ones. They're just gonna give you extra, probably, right? Every single
Yeah,
book's
I
giving
think
you more.
they'll probably give a few more, right? And so it might, well, because they also have to reprint this, right? Because if it comes out as an Arcane journal, it will basically overwrite whatever
Invalidate.
this is. This will invalidate this.
Mm.
So I don't know how many pages to pages we will get. I think we will get some new things. I think that's the biggest thing we're hoping we'll see. Besides I'd love to see skeletons at the table. Love to see the monsters infantry have a reason. I'd love to see the ghouls have more of that, and we'd love to see just more support for the vampires and more really exciting vampire builds using the bloodline themes. The bloodline themes are still clearly represented here. They're still part of the lore. They're just not fleshed out enough with the items and the powers to really represent them on the table.
Well, for example, Master of the Black Arts could be I'm a Necrarch. That's my upgrade for being a Necrarch. But
Yep.
you only get to go from level 2 to level 3 when, if anything, like shouldn't you be 4 if you're like a special, and then that should be mutually exclusive with being something else. Like if I'm Beguile is obviously the Neferata Lahmian inspired one.
Yep.
But they don't do very much. Like we're not just talking about I want a vampire power that gives me some ability, because in the past the vampire powers were very much too strong, because there was a certain power that
They
gave you the
were.
ability that every time you did a wound, you could then just make an attack again, and those attacks could proc it again. So if you hit like a vampire lord would go into combat with state troops, he could kill like 12 or 15 in a turn because he just kept
Yeah.
getting to go again and again.
But keep in mind the vampire, his stats are still great, don't get me wrong, but he's not the powerhouse he used to be. He used to have Demon Prince, Chaos Lord, raw stats, and his stats are still strong, but they're not what they used to be. And the game is obviously different than the game what it used to be as well. So it's just I do think that the first this feels like maybe the second or third draft of the book. They clearly didn't finish it. They clearly gave it more love than they did the other legacy armies, which didn't get as much love and attention. But it feels like clearly it wasn't finished, and so hopefully this will give them an opportunity to go and finish it and put more energy and effort into it.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. Yeah, I mean, I think that the stat line is totally fine by itself, but then they don't
Mhm.
start off as a wizard, and they can't have
Yeah,
armor and be a wizard, and the vampire powers don't turn them into anything more than. I mean, basically, my Glade Lord, right, from Wood Elves, has essentially the same stat line, weapon skill, and he doesn't have as high of a strength, but what he does have is he has kindreds and he has strikes first, so he has better initiative, and he has the kindred's upgrades, which are actually just way better than the vampiric powers. So the vampire starts at a higher stat line, but can't upgrade into anything interesting or exciting. And there's not even any kind of flavorful, but not super powerful abilities in there. There's kind of just sadness because a lot of those
I
just
think
don't
there's
ever
just
come up.
you just want to see the synergy. I think that's the thing. The vampire is
Synergy,
also
yeah,
like you might as well just put him on with the blood knights. You might as well put him on a dragon, and that's kind of it. I want to see other combos. I want to see. Give me the reason to put the vampire on foot with the skeletons, or with the ghouls, or with the banshees or wraiths. Right. I want to see more of that. That's another thing. Like we don't see the hex wraiths a whole bunch. We almost never see wraiths at all. The terror is cool, right? But the problem is that's the only thing the wraith does. Like its profile is not good beyond the fact that it does
yeah,
terror. And it's very pricey. And it's like, yeah, cool. That's great when you're fighting low leadership armies. But then when you're fighting another undead army or, even goblin hordes or, hey, we have horde and warband. Our leadership is nines and tens or it's just, I'd like to see the other there's the clearly good units, and then there's the flavors of vampire, the flavors of the undead army, from the ghouls to the skeletons to the monstrous infantry, vampiric monsters to the ethereal units, the wraiths, the banshee. We have lots of screams. Screams they got covered. Hopefully they'll actually revise the scream rules versus like our community and other communities have made our own community rules
yeah. You need an
to help
FAQ
balance
to
them out a
explain
bit.
how the hell that works, basically,
Yeah.
because there's a lot of complicated questions that come up. And also, I think that the screams in general are just very strong because of the kinds of units that other people are playing. If you're playing nothing but monsters, war machines, and like low wound count high armor type units, then the screams are very strong. If you play against Jonathan at our most recent event had 200 goblins on the table, and not even any fanatics, and it was like, great, that won't be doing anything.
Or you play an army that's got all veteran, so they've
Yeah.
just reroll all the leadership tests. They're not going to do anything. So, but again, not for the screams. I'm talking just the wraiths and the hex wraiths and the other ethereal units or the ghost, right? Like, what can you do to make them more compelling and more interesting to hit the table? And the black coach, I would love to see the black coach get some play at the new model. I know there's the
new
old
model's
model, which is great too.
insanely huge.
I know it's awesome, but so what? I want to put it on the table. It's amazing. I want the black coach to be good, and I want it to be worth taking, and that's just not right now. So I think without having to reinvent the wheel, I think there's an opportunity for them to do some pretty easy tweaks to really make this army a lot more compelling and to add a lot more build variety out there for
Right.
people.
Yeah, and just to be clear with one more thing, I think it's highly unlikely that we're going to see a release of the Vampire Coast and then it's just all of the Vampire Counts models. I don't think that's going to happen. I think if the Vampire Coast comes, it will have its own brand new plastic that goes with it, and that could be in addition to Vampire Counts or it'd be able to bring those units along with them.
We could see it as an Arcane Journal army. We could see it as a variant army, and it could be, hey, you can't take these 2 or 3 things, but now you could take an undead giant or a skeleton giant. Now you could take an undead cannon crew. Now you could take and here's the few new unit entries, and there's no models to support them. I think we could totally see that, and I think we could. I mean, that's an obvious choice for an Arcane Journal if they did it beyond just a grand army of them next year, or at least in the first edition of the game. And then if that's popular, which of course it will be, maybe edition 2, we might see pirate vampires. I do think that is. I think that is more likely we will see new models and new kits for that in the future in the second edition than we will for them to just keep refreshing these older kits. I think that is very likely.
For sure, definitely. So, look, these are just some of our thoughts. Obviously, there are some elements of the vampires list that are very frustrating to play against because I think that they didn't realize how powerful certain synergies would be. I think that the 2 that come to mind is basically just you have so many different ways that you can use screams that are messed up that because the rules are so simple that people interpret them to mean I just kill your whole army with this. Well, maybe not. Maybe that's not how it's supposed to work, right? And then the second one is obviously I think just you have a Graveguard unit with the Draconoff banner as your core slot. That's probably just unintentionally overpowered. Like it just doesn't really feel right to play against with almost every other core unit in the game. You're like, this is nuts. For sure.
Cool. All right. So there you go. So that's our hopes, our dreams, our speculation. Again, we don't know anything else that everybody else does, but it sure does look like the Old World team is laying a lot of groundwork that this is going to happen. And I think it is very likely to happen next year. I certainly hope that it does. And we will find out how many of our predictions were correct or not correct if it does happen.
Definitely.
Evan, any last closing thoughts, sir?
Just that you can stay legendary, and hey, if you really like the videos, you can always subscribe and like the video you just watched. It always helps it get out to more people who might like it too.
Cool. We'll see y'all next time.